Good evening, America. It's Al at It's Happening Out, and we have an interesting interview for you this evening. Very famous pop singer and songwriter, Ari Gold, and I have to let everybody in on a little secret. He's lying in bed. I just saw him get out of bed just a moment ago, so he's got to tell the truth because I've just outed him. Ari, good evening, and thank you for joining It's Happening Out.
Thank you. I don't know if I'm very famous. I think I'm show business's best kept secret. So don't tell anybody.
Yeah, well, let us all continue to try to propel the idea that you are very famous. I've seen you twice. Your performance and your music is great. Our viewers, as you know, we're America's most popular live gay talk show, which is saying something because we're one of the few video live news gay products in America, and we're very proud of that, and we're happy that you're here. I want to ask you about a few things. I've read a lot about you in recent weeks, and several things really fascinated me. As a young person growing up in New York, you grew up in the Jewish community, and of course I understand you came out very early as gay. How young were you?
Well, I came out in high school to my best friend when I was 16, and then I came out again to the rest of my friends and my family when I was 18, and that was my first year of college.
I was curious when I was reading some bio statistics about you. Did you have similarities to your experience in Jewish community versus gay community? Were there any similarities?
Well, I'm not sure exactly what you're getting at, but I think what I would say to that is that I mean, you know, when you're in a community that can in some ways be a bubble, or any community really, the idea of community, there's always like an inside and an outside, and there's always those within the community and those who may feel left out of that community. That's a theme that I really think about and explore a lot, because when we exist, I think human beings need to exist in community. We need community in order to thrive, in order to not be depressed. Human connection it's everything. So, but in many ways, all kinds of communities have a tendency to put lines around who they are to define themselves, and because of that, certain people end up feeling left out or outside or excommunicated from their own community. So in that sense, there are similarities.
Yeah, and that was the point. I was curious if you had the parallels, if you felt the parallels in those. Another thing that I thought was interesting in some of the bio information I read about you is that you did voice character work in the Cabbage Patch Kids. Is that true?
It is true. I played Sybil Sadie, who was a tomboy. So she was very butch.
Yeah. It was a precursor of things to come.
Playing butch. You're absolutely right. Yes, but in many ways, it was a trans. I got to, play I transitioned from one gender to another through my voice work, but yeah, I loved playing Sybil Sadie, and it was on a couple of the Cabbage Patch Kid records, which I believe the first one went platinum.
That's awesome. We have a cast member host, Aaron Phoenix, who is a trans activist, and I know here tonight he's thrilled to hear that you were a trailblazer for the Cabbage Patch Kids.
Yes, it's one of the few of the things. I did a lot of stuff as a child, performer, and Cabbage Patch Kids was definitely a highlight. As was, of course, I have to mention Jem and the Holograms.
Yeah,
because,
of course.
I mean, actually, I was a fan, because I always talk about how I was a huge fan of Jem before I got the gig for, as I like to say, this Orthodox Jewish gay boy from the Bronx playing 12-year-old Orthodox Jewish gay boy from the Bronx playing a 8-year-old Vietnamese orphan girl.
Well, being gay, you have lots of experience in being able to have lots of roles.
But so I was a fan of Jem before I got the gig, but I was also a fan of Cabbage Patch Kid, and I remember, really, really wanting one, how difficult it was to get one, how there were lines outside of the stores just to get a Cabbage Patch Kid, and I finally got my boy Cabbage Patch Kid because, my parents wouldn't let me have a girl Cabbage Patch Kid.
Yeah.
There's a lot to say about all of this because...
Yeah. And then I read...
Then the different noses that the Cabbage Patch Kids had, and my Cabbage Patch was one of the ones with the bigger nose, and it sort of reflected my own Jewish nose, which I had issues with because being in show business, I was considered too ethnic to be on camera. Right. So it's very deep.
I'm not sure, but I think the two of us are geeking out right now over these dolls.
I can geek out in I'm a nerd.
Okay.
For sure.
And then I read, and this really got interesting. I read you went to Yale and then transferred to NYU and got your bachelor's there. So you're really a smart boy.
Actually, I went to NYU first, transferred to Yale only for a semester, and then I went back to NYU to graduate. But I specifically went to Yale because I had ended up. I started off as a music major, and I didn't really like studying music in school, even though I'd been doing it my whole life. What I was really inspired by, it was when I discovered that maybe I did like to think and to read and philosophy and theory. I was able to discover that, and all of that was tied to my gay identity and tied to, queer theory, lesbian and gay studies, which is what it was called at the time. I took the first ever intro to lesbian and gay studies course ever given at NYU.
Wow.
At the time. But there wasn't a lot of undergraduate classes. There was no other undergraduate classes, so that's why I went to Yale, because they were actually even more, pioneering, I guess. So I decided to go to Yale to see what it's like to do to study that on an undergraduate level, because most of the classes I took at NYU were in the graduate school. So I was always like this little undergrad kid, with all these graduate students, and it was awesome, but it was intimidating sometimes. And I was like, I want to be with people my own age, and I got to go to Yale, and after taking all these graduate courses, feel pretty smart with a bunch of gay leaders.
And there's the point, Ari, you already know this. In the gay community, sexy is sexy, but when you're smart sexy, you're super sexy. So congratulations to you. Hey, I was reading all of these awards: Billboard Top 10 Recording Artist, Independent Music Award winner, 3 times Out Music Award winner. That's completely awesome. I'm curious in terms of entertainment. Along comes a little show called Entourage, and Ari Gold, the character of Entourage. I want to know, and so does everyone in America, do you absolutely hate Jeremy Piven?
Apparently my brother once saw him at a party, and he was like, my brother is the real Ari Gold, and Jeremy Piven said, I'm sorry for him.
So you don't hate him?
Well, that was a pretty asshole-ish thing to say, so maybe I do hate him. I don't know. He's not, from what I've heard, he's not the most likable human, both personally and the character. Okay. But, it's a big deal. Anyone that knows me knows, I was pretty upset about it. I have to admit, because I've been Ari Gold in Screen Actors Guild since the 80s. I had arigold.com since the 90s. So I have been building my brand for quite some time. And part of that brand was me sort of transforming myself into something that I felt like was combating stereotypes as a gay person, as a Jewish person, that Jews can be sexy and rock stars. We're not just sleazy behind the scenes agents.
Right.
And then this character comes along that is the stereotype.
To me, it's interesting because the character and the show almost commits identity theft, and it's really interesting that would happen to a gay performer.
Thank you for saying that, because I don't know how. I mean, there's a lot of stories to tell about it. I've heard stories about how the name came about, because that wasn't originally the name. Of course, the character was named after Ari Emanuel, who is Rahm Emanuel's brother, and who is one of the biggest and maybe aggressive, let's just say, talent agents in show business. And there's all kinds of stories that I've heard from the actors and all kinds of stuff. But I think I hear where you're going for, and I appreciate you saying that, because there is a phenomenon, there is something real about someone who, gay artists and gay voices being silenced and erased.
Absolutely.
It's not just all in my head. There's a history of it. It happens. I've seen it. There's just weird stuff that goes on, and you're like, is this really happening? Like, I'm sure to an extent a lot of artists, feel that, the challenge of being seen and all that. But there is definitely something specific when you are a gay artist, and and I've never been a gay artist who tried to go down easily, let's just say. And you can take that for whatever
that's worth. Okay. Yeah. I'm interested. I'm listening now.
I wanted to be seen in our multiplicity, in our full humanity, and that means not toning down the sexuality part, but also not being seen only as a sexual object either. And it's complicated, and we, in the realm of pop music, have very few examples, especially those who have been out from the beginning of their career.
Yeah, that's right. And well, congratulations to you. You have survived Entourage, and Ari Gold still stands. So congratulations.
Thank you. I still have my .com.
That's right. As I was promoting that I was going to do this interview with you, and so many of my friends immediately mentioned to me, which I didn't know until just recently, the word cancer came up a lot in the conversations. And in most conversations, it's an all-stop moment in conversation. But it doesn't seem to be for you. Tell us how you're doing.
Wow. It's a trip. One thing I have always done as an artist and someone who's out there in public is to tell my truth. And the way in which, when we tell our personal truths, especially the hard truths, and we have the potential to help another human being. So I mean, if I'm going to go through a health issue, as serious as that, the best that can be, the best that can happen from talking about that is that I can potentially help someone else, because it's definitely the most challenging thing I've ever been through in my life. I'm still dealing with it, but when you talk about it, there's been, I wrote an essay about it actually, and talk about parallels. There's interesting parallels about getting that identity put on you, the big C, cancer, and getting the identity, the gay identity, and the parallels and the things that people project onto you, and the way in which you feel. Then you don't want to keep things in a shame place. You don't want to, even the word, I grew up with that word being the worst word, cancer. cancer. That's how you say it. You can't even say it in full voice. And the truth is that so many people get diagnosed with, I think it's something like 40% of all people get diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime, which is scary, but possibly true. And there's so many different kinds, and there are all kinds of ways of dealing with it. And, in some ways it can be seen as something that's chronic. So many people, even more than 40% of people, have a health issue of some sort. And we do have to talk about these things.
It makes me wonder, and how are you doing? Tell us how
Thank you so much for asking. I feel good today, and it's one day at a time. My journey with it is not over, and
so you're still battling.
Yeah, I'm still battling. Yeah, when I've had such horrible experiences of being in pain and being in the hospital, really experiencing things that are, pretty unimaginable. I know if who've gone through some stuff, maybe one person I know who I would say maybe his thing was worse than mine, but very few can I say that about, which is insane. And I still potentially have things ahead of me that to deal with. But, it's difficult to talk about because today I'm here, today I'm not in pain, and today, I'm still working on my projects, and I have all kinds of things that I want to do. I've been performing. I have, 2 amazing shows that I am, I just want to get out there as much as I possibly can. And so it's tough because I want to be honest with the world, with my fans, and with my friends and my family. At the same time, I don't want that to put me in a box and make people think, oh, I don't want to touch that. And people are scared. People get scared of it. And I hope that talking about it makes people less scared, because we're all dealing with stuff. And, it was very brave of, Gaga, for example, to talk about her health stuff. But, she was dealing with it in horrible pain, but still touring the world. Yeah. So,
And Ari, you give the opportunity to open the door. What are the projects you're working on right now?
Well, I've been releasing a remix every month since July, so it's 12 months to Pride, and it's going to culminate at World Pride, which is this year in New York City, which is my native hometown, and I'm releasing Remix to Freedom, which is basically a remix component of my last album, which I'm so proud of. And since you mentioned it, somehow in the midst of all of this health issue and through grappling with mortality and things of that sort, I wrote an album and was able to pour my heart out into an album. But, the album is so fun, and it's so, because there's so much joy when you're dealing with the struggle. There's joy in there, but there's, the pain and the heartache. And the album, Soundtrack to Freedom, is about how dance music is the defining soundtrack to LGBT freedom, kind of like the way soul music is to civil rights and folk music is to the feminist and women's movement. But so, it's like sort of a personal soundtrack to freedom and also a collective soundtrack to freedom. And this project, Remix to Freedom, will be fully out in June for World Pride in New York City, which, of course, is also the 50th anniversary of Stonewall. Yes, so it's super exciting. I've been performing the entire album. It came out of, it was a dream that I had, and finally it was my birthday, and I was like, what do I want for my birthday? And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give myself this gift.
You're a Valentine baby, I understand.
I'm sorry?
You're a Valentine baby, I understand.
In February, that is correct. So I gave myself the gift of performing the entire album from beginning to end. And it's really quite an amazing experience, and the audience, I think, really has an amazing experience from what's happened the few times I've been able to do this. And I perform with Gold Nation because that's sort of the album is out. It's my new moniker, I guess, but it's not mine. It's all of ours, because it's part of an idea that we are all one gold nation. I can say one gold nation under God, but whatever it is that you believe in, whatever energy, whatever universe, we are one. At the end of the day, we are one. And for me, using gold, it's one gold nation. And that means not just the amazing, talented people I get to bring on stage with me, but everyone in the audience who is also there and participating, and we even bring people up on the stage, and so we are all one gold nation. And I am so dying to bring this show to South Florida.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And the moment you know the details of that, you make sure that you reach out to us about it. I read an article and a quote from Clyde Davis, and I adore Clyde Davis. He wrote about you, and he had a quote in it that said, "Ari's personal lyrics attest to the battles he has been through. He writes from the heart." What are the personal battles? Was he talking about your cancer, or what was he talking about?
No, that was definitely before any of my health issues.
Yeah. Okay.
They say. Actually, I don't know what they say. I'm trying to think. It's like sometimes listen, I've been given a tremendous amount of gifts in my life that I'm very grateful for. But I've also been given a tremendous amount of challenges, and we have to be grateful for both of those things. I think what Clyde was talking about, that quote was specifically, he gave me feedback on my album Transport Systems, and that was my third album. This last one is my fifth album, and that was my third, and I really poured my heart out on that album. And I've been through some things. I had a major career when by the time I was 8-9 years old. So I've lived quite a few lifetimes already, and battled quite a few things. Just growing up gay in a religious community, as I did, as many of us have. Just getting through that, coming out and all of that stuff. Relationships.
Actually, speaking of that, I'm curious. I also read an interesting quote from Whoopi Goldberg that said, "Ari is doing for pop music what Obama did for the presidency." That is such an odd statement. What was she talking about there?
I could tell you what she was talking about, and Whoopi is so awesome. I get like little, this is the part where I need the filter to put all the hearts coming out of my out of me, because I just love Whoopi Goldberg, and everyone loves Whoopi Goldberg, and it's because when you meet her and when you're with her, she just exudes. You just become comfortable with yourself with her. It's an odd thing. She puts everyone at ease. But I did her radio show, and she fought for me to be on there, and what she meant, well, because it was also a little while ago, and it's basically in the sense that Obama was saying that a president can be a black man, and I think that she meant too, a pop star can be gay, and that's what she meant. That in pop music, I was representing in a way that had not been represented before. Huge compliment.
That's a huge compliment. All right, two other questions I'm curious about. First, as you know, we are a gay talk show. We talk about everything, but we also occasionally talk about politics, more than occasionally, actually. You were born during the heart of Nixon and Watergate, and now you're living the politics of President Trump. What do you think about what you're watching in the world?
Wow, well, that's a huge question. I keep myself updated. I do not watch the 24-hour news cycle because I think it would make me insane. Sometimes I get caught in. I definitely, if I am going to listen to it, I definitely want to hear it from the people that seem to make more sense than others, like a Rachel Maddow, for example. Or I just sort of get information from my Facebook feed. I have some very political friends on my Facebook feed, and I just sort of rely on them because I can't consume myself with it because it's so upsetting. I mean, when it happened, I for like the year before the election, I was really into Facebook Live. It was like a new technology, and I was really into to being able to communicate with my friends and my fans through Facebook Live. And I went on live the night of the election, and I was in such a good mood that day. I posted something after I voted. I was like super excited to live in a time when I would see the first female president. Like, that made me so happy. And I watched that live again. I was in like a blissful state. And then I went live at a little, election party at a friend's house, and I went live there. And all of a sudden, my live feed was upside down. It turned upside down, and I was like, my head was like the other way, and I was like, what's going on? I can't. I was like, why is my live feed upside down? Couldn't figure out why it was upside down. I still don't know why it went upside down. And it was in that sort of little window where things seemed to be turning and going upside down. And then when I found out the results, I went back on live, and I just cried in front of, anyone that was watching. Real, man tears, as they say. And, and now it's been, what, 2 years?
2 years.
And, and I just think, okay, well, I definitely had good reason to cry. Things have already taken place that have happened, and deaths have happened. People have lost lives because of this president. Yeah. And families have been torn apart because of this president. And children have, and I mean, it's unfathomable to think about, and so I would love to talk to your log cabin Republican, because and I do think it's important to still try to communicate with each other. Although, I think this idea of an echo chamber, I'm a proponent of preaching to the converted or the perverted. I think it's important for us to talk to each other and to come together, all of us who feel the same way. There's nothing wrong with that. There's like a shaming that happens or something. Oh, you're in your echo chamber. But no, I think we need to strengthen ourselves in our own.
We talk about tribalism a lot. I have to tell you, I know Joe Brookman, our host on the show, who is a log cabin Republican, is thrilled right now that you've called him out, and you would like him very much. My last question, I wanted to.
But wait, can I just interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
And I say I would like to talk to him because I have had Republican friends before this election, and one of them in particular I can think of, our friendship has suffered a great deal in this election, and so that's to say that I would love to talk to him, because I certainly do not think that all Republicans are bad people, and I don't even think all ideas that Republicans can have are horrible. But for me, I don't even see the current president as really representing the Republican Party, and so I cannot understand how someone can identify as Republican and still support this president. So it's like if you're a Republican and you support this president, then in my opinion you're completely ruining and disregarding any merit that the Republican Party may have ever had. So that's, I'm just going to say that.
Well, Joe is still happy that you, even if he disagrees with you, he's still happy you called him out and shouted out to him. The last thing I want to ask you about is entertainment and what you do in your point about how the gay community celebrates through your kind of music, and I completely understand and agree with you. Club performance, as you know, has had some effects in recent years. You, Christine W., other types of performers, and that is. Many people have suggested because of something that developed called RuPaul's Drag Race. And now in many clubs, Ru Queens dominate the club circuits and the entertainment performance circuits. What do you think about some of the changes that we're watching in terms of what we consider entertainment in America, in the gay community for sure, in the circuit?
Well, okay. Well, first off, I'm a big fan of RuPaul's Drag Race. I am a big fan of RuPaul. I am also a dear friend of RuPaul's. I met Ru in I think it was 2002 or 3. And we've been very close ever since. So I know that's going to foster a lot of hate and jealousy for some people, because he is on my speed dial, and we do text each other, and we see each other whenever he has time. He's quite a busy man. And because when I met him, he was sort of in a little bit of a underground phase in his career, and I was helping him.
I saw you in Star Booty.
Thank you.
Right.
You saw my booty and Star Booty.
Right, exactly.
I was in a phase of helping him with getting your music out in independent channels, because he, was not signed at the time and all that stuff. And I was doing the indie music thing. Now, of course, I've watched him as he has built this empire. And I'm so very proud of him, and I'm so very proud, as he himself is proud, of all the careers that he has given. Because I grew up as a huge fan in the gay community, LGBTQ community, as a huge fan of drag. I used to write about drag for the local New York gay rag here, and for I wrote an essay in the porn magazine Blue Boy in the 90s about drag. I've always been a fan of drag, but drag, it used to be you couldn't get more than $150 at a gig at a gay bar. That was good, and so he has really made careers for these queens, and drag queens have been at the forefront of the gay liberation and equality movement, and so they deserve all of this success.
That's great.
With that said, I will also say that it has for me.
This is called the other shoe dropping, by the way.
Yes. Well, you take the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and there you have the facts of life.
Right.
Everything I ever needed to learn, I learned from the TV's 80s sitcom themes.
Right.
So,
we're a kindred spirit, Ari.
Okay, awesome. But with that said, it's been difficult for me as a, we can do an entire show on this and on, gender and how I identify my gender. But let's just say, as a cis-presenting, I'll just say that, gay male, it's been very difficult for me to compete and get the gigs with the girls of Drag Race. It's difficult for drag queens who have been working for years before Drag Race, to compete with national television. You're competing with national television. National television is a very powerful tool, and it, of course, impacts social media, which, is also now such an important tool. And so I think that I would like to see us make room, and to continue to make space for, gender non-binary folk, which is not necessarily drag and not necessarily even trans. It's the visibility and the progress and the equality that the trans community, another dear and very old friend of mine, Laverne Cox, and has been at the forefront of that movement, and the progress I have seen with that movement is awesome and incredible. So I would like to see all of us as an LGBTQIA+ community, to all of us make room for all the colors, all the shapes, the sizes, the genders, the gender expressions, the sexual expressions of who we are as a community. And we can all work to do that. And we don't have to, we sometimes have to prioritize, because there are certain bodies that are at more risk than other bodies, risk for, violence and death, serious issues. But we have the capacity to make room for everybody to deal with more than one issue at a time. We can do this. And I would like to see that happen. I would like to really celebrate the multiplicity of our community.
Ari, it's a perfect exclamation point to your 5th studio album, Soundtrack to Freedom. And I applaud you for the remix March to Stonewall that you're doing all the way to June of 2019. I alert all of our viewers at the end of our interview here, we're going to show you a bit of Ari Gold and the latest and greatest from Ari Gold. Ari, thank you very much. On behalf of everyone at It's Happening Out, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
I'm going to conversation. I feel so inspired to continue my day now. Thank you.
Absolutely, and I'm going to tell all of my friends I was in bed with Ari Gold. I'm for sure going to tell them. I was. All right.
You're not lying.
No, I'm not lying. Exactly. Thank you. All right. Ari, a pleasure, and we wish you all the luck with your medical situation, and we know you're going to get better.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good night.
I hope to see you live. Okay, good night.